Thank you, dear. This is the picture we are going to be looking at today. And at first sight, it looks a little bit unpromising. However, I asked Rachel to take the photo because I didn't have my own camera at the time. And I did it for a reason. I was very attracted by this little bridge and the shape of those trees, the way they go off from the ground. They're nicely shaped. Also, when I was there in real life, this hedge along the back of the field looked further away, and this looked a bit nearer. Because of the way cameras take pictures, all these have appeared to be in the same sort of tone. So that's one of the adjustments we're going to make. I'm going to miss out that little square, which I think is a notice saying beware of the pond or something. I'm going to miss out these cars because I don't need them in the picture. And I've rearranged this area here, taken out those, and that's path across there, and this one down here. And what I've done is to create a path from the gate leading round to the foreground here, just to make it a little bit more attractive. Now, the reason I chose this was because I thought it would help you to interpret a photograph that you took, and then you thought to yourself, what did I take that for? Well, if you cast your mind back as to why you took it, you then will be able to adjust your painting so that it resurrects what you saw with your eyes rather than what the camera has presented you with. So in this case, the camera is a sketchbook. Right. So I'm going to, here's my page. I'm going to start with Prussian blue as my blue. And I don't want it to be very strong. I want a very light mix. Not so light that it's practically non-existent, but enough to give a bit of colour. There's not a lot of point in making the sky interesting because the picture is all about the trees. So all you're doing with your sky is putting on the paint in such a way as to give you the result that you want. Right, just to hurry it up a bit, I've got a big brush which I'm going to use to put water on the top of the picture. And I'm coming down just to the line where those bushes reach the ground and no further. That's as far as I want to go. Right, and that's the last probably you'll see of that brush for today. Now I've got my Prussian blue mix and I'm going to tip the page a little bit so that the paint will run down. And I'm bringing it down the page like this as I'm going. I just want to get some colour on here to give me something to work my my paints into, to give some kind of colour to the background. And oops, don't want to get too violent with it. So to bring the water down to about there. That's where the line is. Gone straight through those trees. They don't matter because they're darker. So when I paint on top, can't remember what I was going to say now. But when I paint on top, I'll be able to go over them quite easily. They're not important. Right, that's sort of wet, that area there. Now, if I put these in now, while the paper is wet, what I'm going to do is to put in that row of hedges there, hedges and trees. I'm going to take the Prussian blue that I've got. Now, I don't want them to go miles and miles further back. We're still on the Welsh part of the Cheshire Plain, if you like. So it's very flat. There's no mountains in sight, nothing to give them real distance. That hedge, in fact, blocks off all the view. So if I mix it, Prussian blue, with a bit of raw sienna, I'll get a sort of vaguely greeny colour. And I want it fairly thick. If I make it too thin, it'll gallop. And I don't want it to gallop, I just want it to sort of mildly rise from the edge here. I'm not too worried. I can make it lie down now. No, I'll maybe leave it up because of galloping. Now, because the water stops there, the paint is not going to spread down into the field. It's only going to go up if it goes anywhere. So when you start off, start somewhere that doesn't matter very much, like the edge here, and see what happens to what you're doing. I'm just putting the paint in and letting it spread. Looking more or less at the shapes that are available to be seen on the picture. You can see how they are spreading up into the wet paint above it, giving me quite a nice shape because they're spreading so nicely. Now, if while that is still wet, I take some more Prussian blue, which is quite dark, muddy it up with a bit of brown. It makes a more muddy colour. I don't know if that's dark enough. You want it to be quite dark. If you put that in at the bottom of the hedge there, just dot it in. Just to give a bit of form. You can see how it's creating weight at the bottom of the hedge. It sort of anchors it to the ground nicely. And I'm putting a little bit higher up because you do get shadows in these things. And it adds a little bit more to the form and shape of what it is you're trying to create here. Now I can tidy up that line. And it's fairly tidy sort of line there. Right, so that's it. Now, that gives you vague appearance of trees in the far distance, but they're not so strong that they're going to fight the trees in the foreground. They just sort of create a barrier across the picture, a stitching line to fasten the picture together. I describe it in various different ways. Now, I'm going to well, I'll talk about the bridge next. There are ways of doing this. You could actually mask out the little gate and the posts of the bridge, which would be fine if I had any masking fluid, which I haven't got around to getting any yet. So the other thing to do is to work round the posts as you come to them, which requires a bit more control maybe and one can be very happy with. Right, now if I take, let's see, if I take, I'm going to use Viridian as the basis of my green. Now that's a shrieker. You can see that. That would look terrible. I can't think of anything you would want to paint that colour apart from a tarpaulin perhaps. But if you add a bit of yellow to it, it changes. I want a sort of, that's quite a nice colour. I think I'll do for the foreground actually. Let's see what happens if we take Prussian blue and add yellow ochre. That's more like. So we've got Viridian. Sorry, I meant Viridian, not Prussian blue. And if we mix it with yellow ochre, you get a much quieter colour. I'm going to put quite a lot in. There we are. Now, I'm going to put in this field here. I want it to be duller than the grass in the foreground, which is why I used raw sienna or yellow ochre, I can't remember which. Now, if I start over here, is that dry? It's not quite dry, so I don't want to actually touch it. I run that along there. Gives me a nice straight edge. Doesn't matter too much about this edge because that's the reeds. I can go across the trees because they're darker. But now I come to the first of the posts and I want to go round that. So I'm coming along here. That post there actually goes above, so I'll come down here. You are allowed to be careful like this, you know. Everyone thinks when you're painting watercolour that you've got to make everything sort of smooth and running together. But if you're careful, you can, in fact, do quite nicely with taking care and painting. And you can see the bridge is starting to appear as it is. Now, some of this is going to be covered because it's tree trunk. Some of it will be covered by bushes. If you take care, I can run that now off towards the end of the picture. Like that. There we are. Right. And this comes this way, here. So there we are, that's nice. Can we take that out? Right, so that's given me my distant field. And I've been careful to work around these as far as is possible. Now, in here we have reeds and whatever, which creates a bit of a pattern there. I could put that in as a colour, might be an idea now while we're thinking about it. Now, if I want this grass to lie down, I've got to make it either darker at the back or darker at the front. I think in this case, because I want the concentration to be here, I'm going to make it darker at the front, at the back, and paler towards the front. So I'm going to pick up my water again, my big brush, leaving out the reedy bit at the moment. Just look at this part here to see what we can achieve. Now, If I take this green and put it here, it's quite a bright green, as you can see. It's meant to be lawn, for heaven's sake. So, and that's the beginning of the path there. If I tip it up, put more in there, let it run down. Just let it run down. Come on, friend, down you come. Come on. I could actually just ignore the path, I think, for the time being. Go across there. I used, if I remember rightly, Viridian. And I think this is Indian yellow that I'm using here. Gives me a nice green. And as you can see, it's getting paler as it comes down the page. Paler and paler and paler, until it practically peters out to no colour at all. A bit more dark up there. While it's still wet, you can continue to add paint and achieve the desired effect. It's coming down nicely. There we are. It's running down quite nicely there. Right. Watching paint dry. Now I can't work on that at the moment to put the path in that I've decided on. I can put that in with tussocks of grass or change of colour or put a bit of gravel down or something. I can easily work on that. I think the next thing to do while that is drying is to put in the tree trunks. Is that dry? No, it's not really dry. I'm a bit stymied by how damp the whole thing is. Well, we'll do a bit of mixing while I'm waiting. Now those are quite dark trunks of the tree, and I have been using Prussian blue as my dark blue, and you can get quite a nice black out of Prussian blue and scarlet, believe it or not. Some sort of purple colour at the moment, just needs to intensify. Now remember, if you want a dark colour, you have to have more paint, less water. So that's what I'm doing. I'm collecting as much paint as I can to mix into these so that I get a really dark. Let's see how dark that is. That's not dark enough, there's too much water in. So we'll pick up some more paint. And then pick up some more red. Now if I dry the brush first, by rolling it on a damp. Well, that's quite a nice colour. It's not exactly as dark as I want it to be, but it's quite a nice colour. So let's see about these trees. I'm not going to attempt to put the leaves on just yet. That's another day's work, I think. But what I have done is to indicate the fall of the trees. There's a nice one here, which starts about here. And I want to keep on going around that tree trunk there, that post. And then it grows off this way. It would be so easy just to sweep the brush up. I don't think that's going to give me the delicacy of these particular trees. Sorry, I think my head's in the way. There we are. And then this comes off here. And there's some branches out here. And one going up there. Now, if we take that dark again, the same bole of the tree is giving me the next tree, which is standing practically vertically. There's a thin one, which is nearly vertical, going up here. I'm going to get a thin bit there. That would look ridiculous. Breaks are all right. You can cover them with foliage and whatever, so that's okay. And then this one, all part of the same thing here, and it comes down this side of the post as well. So we have this coming up here, quite a thick one, this one. Again, it splits. So when it splits, it gets thinner because that thickness goes into these two thicknesses. Just giving an indication of the tree and where it's at. So that's one tree. Then there's the next tree here on the other side of the little bridge. That starts lower down. It starts about here. Let me point back. Right, and it's not as thick as that one. And it starts off fairly straight. It's going to be a good soldier. But when it gets to about this height, this height here, it bends a little bit before it starts to go straight again. I don't know what happened to it. It had a trauma of some description.
Big old bear sat on it.
Oh, I expect so.
10 minutes.
Right, okay. And then where it bends, here, there's one or two of the branches going off there. There's another one there, so I should imagine something got chopped at some stage. And then finally, there's these two together here. I'm going to turn the picture around because of I'm working over wet areas. I know where they are. They start on a level with that one, so they're about there. One of them goes straight up, which is what trees want to do, and this one was not damaged in any way. And then this one somehow didn't get, I think it's the same tree, it's just bifurcated. Comes over here. And comes out over here. And there's a branch which comes out over here. So there we are. There we are. Right. Now I'll stop there, and it will be allowed to dry over the next week. And then I'll be able to go back and put on the foliage and put in this reedy bit around here. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and you can at least get this far. Thing to remember, if you wet the sky before you put your colour on, and only take the water as far as the first horizon, if you like, then while it's still wet, you add your bluey greens, but still quite green because they're not that far away, to create the distant hedge. This was a green I made from Viridian and raw sienna, so it is a more muted sort of colour. This is a brighter green, again Viridian, but this time with Indian yellow. And in this case, I've darkened it near the little stream and let it come lighter. The result is it tends to just lie down instead of standing up like a brick wall. And then finally, I'll put the tree trunks in because I know what I'm going to do next when it comes to, and putting the tree trunks in like that is going to be useful to me when I'm working on the foliage and stuff. There we are. Good luck. I hope you get that far. It's a question of water management in this case, as always with watercolour. So see if you can manage your water properly.